Have you ever wondered why your belly button is right in the middle of your body, yet no one talks about it? It's strange. As a child, you see it, you touch it, you hide it, and over time, it simply disappears from your awareness. But it remains a scar, a dot, an echo of something that was once alive and connected. When you were born, the first thing they cut was you. Not your skin, not your body. They severed an umbilical cord. This thread was your direct connection to the source, to nourishment, to the primal pulse that kept you alive before you even had a name. But beyond the physical, this cut marked something else. It marked the beginning of forgetting, because no one taught you that this place, right where your navel lies, was much more than just a memory of your birth. It was your antenna. Yes, a living antenna that could feel, sense, and guide you. An antenna that the ancients honored, protected, and awakened, and that they simply switched off for us, perhaps not out of malice, but out of disinterest. And this disinterest became the norm, the culture, the silence. But today, for some reason, you're listening to it, perhaps because you've already felt it, because there's something inside you that you haven't quite forgotten, something that's still trying to reconnect. And on this journey, you'll realize that what you thought was taken from you is still there. It's just waiting for you to awaken it. Has it ever happened to you that something as simple as a body part takes on a new meaning without anyone explaining it to you? It's like when you look in the mirror one day and something changes, right? Outside, inside, there's a different silence. A question that wasn't there before. That's what happens when you remember things you never learned. That's why this chapter begins with a question the ancients asked, but which we stopped asking centuries ago. Why is the navel located exactly in the center of the body? Not in the heart, not in the brain, but right in the middle at the point of balance. The sages of ancient civilizations knew that this center was no coincidence. It was not just a point of reference. It was a gateway, an axis, the point from which all life energy was organized. Ancient texts from the Venta spoke of the Navachakra, the center of inner power from which consciousness could ascend and descend. They didn't call it the navel as we do today. They called it the inner sun, the central fire, because they knew that something dwelled there that was neither mind nor body. It was the point where the two met. In Mesoamerican cultures, the navel was far more than symbolic. It had a literal meaning. The original name of Mexico, in Naguabala, is Mexico, which means in the navel of the moon. What kind of people name their entire civilization after the navel? Someone who understood that this point represented origin, connection, and root. The ancient Egyptians knew this too. In many of their engravings, when they drew the human body as a spiritual map, they marked the center of the abdomen with sun symbols or spirals, not with the intention of decoration. It was a language, a visual key, reminding us that from there began the communication channel to the stars. And yet we cover it, we clothe it, we hide it, we ignore it. When was the last time you touched your navel with presence? When did you honor it? When did you feel it breathe? We don't because we've been taught it's irrelevant, like an old scar with no function. But for those who still remember, there is nothing more functional than this center, because it is from there that everything else is balanced. From there, one breathes inward. From there, the axis emerges. There are Tibetan rituals in which monks place a warm stone on their navel during meditation. It's not intended for the physical body. It serves to awaken the inner heat, the subtle fire that the ancients called tumo. This heat doesn't come from the chest, but from the lower center, the point that connects the higher with the lower. And what happens when a person loses this center? They lose their bearings, spin upside down, their connection to the earth is broken. They live in the spirit, but not in the body. We search outside for what was right there in the middle. And I don't blame him, I don't blame you, because we weren't taught that. But that doesn't mean it's lost, because the body doesn't forget, the body knows, the body remembers, and sometimes a single intention is enough to activate that memory. Touch your navel now, not to understand it, but just to hear it. Because perhaps that's not just where your origins lie. Perhaps the antenna that once connected you to everything and can continue to do so also lives on there. As a child, everything is connected. You feel before you think. You perceive things you can't explain. You know when someone loves you, even if they don't say it. You sense what's going to happen, even if no one has told you. It's not magic, it's body, it's presence, it's something built in, as if we were factory-equipped with a kind of silent radar, an internal antenna that detects the invisible and then disappears over time. Not suddenly, not through trauma. It disappears like a candle extinguished at dawn. At first it's faint, then it's forgotten. But what if it wasn't an accident? What if the cut you suffered at birth was not just biological but also symbolic? Think about it. Barely born, before you can breathe on your own, someone takes a tool and severs the connection that connects you to your source. Without words, without ritual, without goodbyes, just a technical, precise, functional, yet cold act. An act that interrupts an ancient connection between your body and its root. What was once flow becomes closure. What was a channel becomes a scar, and what was a center is forgotten. From this moment on, a slow process of separation begins. No one tells you that there is more beyond this point. No one teaches you how to listen to it. No one tells you what was there. And you learn to live without guidance, without looking toward this center. You learn to ignore it, but your body has never forgotten it. This cut wasn't just physical. It was cultural, spiritual, energetic. Think about how many times since then you've been taught to ascend, to raise your consciousness, to think clearly, to open your mind. Everything points upside down to the higher. But what about your roots? Who taught you to look inward from the center? Who taught you to descend, to feel, to inhabit the place where it all began? Modern spirituality propels us to the stars, but forgets that the first antenna isn't up there, but right in the middle of our bodies where we were cut. And I'm not talking about dark conspiracies. I'm not blaming doctors or science. I'm talking about something more subtle, deeper, a collective forgetting passed down from generation to generation, as if we'd all been severed from something essential, and no one remembered that we were once connected. Because yes, they taught us to use our minds, but not our core. They taught us to walk, but not to put down roots. They taught us to speak, but not to listen to the signal that comes from within. And in doing so, they took away our antenna, not by cutting it off, but by making us believe it never existed. Because what happens when you stop using something? It atrophies, it falls silent. It becomes a silent echo. That's exactly what happened to our inner antenna. It wasn't torn away by force. It was enveloped in silence, and this silence became normal. But now the noise begins, or rather, the buzzing, because sometimes something inside you starts vibrating for no apparent reason. A tingling, an emptiness, a feeling that something is missing, but you don't know what. And maybe that's not fear at all, but a signal. The antenna is trying to activate. Yes, even though it's been dormant for years, it's still there, waiting for someone to remember, for someone to touch it, for someone to listen to it. And you don't need impossible techniques, gurus, or years of practice. You simply need something we should never have lost: intention, presence, breath, and body. Because while the world tells you everything important is out there, something inside you still whispers, "I'm here, I never left, you just turned me off." And now you're learning how to turn it back on. Sometimes it's not about learning something new, but about remembering what you already knew before the noise of the world made you forget. And the body doesn't respond with words when you listen attentively. It responds with sensations, with pulsations, with a kind of silent certainty that cannot be explained but can be felt. This happens when you begin to touch your navel with a different intention, not as a marker, not as a remnant, but as a center, because this energetic, emotional, and vibratory center has been ignored for years. But now that you've come this far, something within you has already been activated. And perhaps you didn't know it, but that antenna is still there. It hasn't died. It was just waiting for your attention. We're not talking about magic or technology here. We're talking about returning to the body and inhabiting your own center with a presence you've forgotten how to feel. And you don't have to do much, just stop. Yes, just like that. Now don't stare at the screen for a second. Don't try to understand it. Just close your eyes, if possible, and bring your right hand to your stomach. Feel your navel without thinking. Just breathe. Do it gently, not like an exercise, like coming home after a long journey. Even the first exhalation awakens something, because when you place your fingers on this point and inhale, you activate what the ancients knew. The breath is the key, the body, the door, and the navel, the lock, breathes in from the earth. Imagine a golden thread rising from the center of the planet, running through your feet and legs, and reaching directly to the central point in your belly. Feel it coiling, anchoring, and igniting. And as you exhale, imagine the same thread stretching upward, up your spine, through your chest, throat, forehead, and finally through the crown of your head, like an antenna between two worlds. Repeat this 3 times. No rush, no obligation, just presence. This is the antenna I'm talking about. This once physical connection can now resonate. And this isn't an illusion. It's energetic biology, embodied spirituality. The human body has thousands of nerve connections in the abdominal cavity. The enteric nervous system, which lives directly in your belly, isn't a simple transmitter, but an autonomous intelligence. And every time you breathe from center, you activate this twisted network. You reactivate a circuit. You're saying, I am here. I am in my body. I am on my axis. You don't have to do it perfectly. You don't have to do it every day. Just remember it when you need to. When you feel like everything outside is pulling at you, the world is splintering you, your mind is dragging you down. Return to the center. Place your hands on the center and breathe. Remember this, and if you want to take it a step further, turn it into a small ritual. You don't need incense or candles. You just need your body, your breath, and your intention. Place both hands on your navel and form a circle with your fingers. Close your eyes and repeat something simple but true to yourself or in the silence of your mind. I reconnect with earth and sky from within. I am back. You can repeat it 3 times or once. It doesn't matter how you do it. What matters is that you feel it. Because the more often you do it, the more strongly this antenna is activated, not outward but inward. And the most amazing thing is that you begin to notice things. Subtle shifts, signs, synchronicities, clearer decisions, a silence that isn't empty but has a direction, and then you understand. It wasn't a practice. It was a way of returning to yourself, a way of remembering that you were never separate. You had just forgotten how to listen. And this point, this navel, to which you never gave any importance, becomes your beacon, your axis, your pulse. It's your antenna, and now it's switched on. Something begins to change as you awaken a part of your body that you had forgotten existed. It's not about seeing lights or hearing voices. It's simpler and deeper. It's as if something suddenly organizes itself within you, as if thoughts are no longer so loud, as if emotions no longer control you as they once did. Not because they're disappearing, but because you now know where to look for them. And that very spot where you need to look for them is the key, because before you may have lived from your head, from reaction, from urgency. But now you live from your center. Do you feel the difference? You're no longer so on the outside. You're no longer so desperate for validation. You no longer have to search for answers, because something inside you, something calm, solid, stable, begins to support you from within. And the curious thing is, it's not about control. It's not about you now mastering your emotions. It's about you no longer confusing them. You feel them, but they don't drag you down because you're anchored, because your antenna is switched on. And this antenna isn't just an idea. It's an axis, a channel that connects your inner self with your surroundings. And this is precisely where many are surprised, because they expected this kind of work to detach them from the world. But the opposite isn't true. When you return to your center, you return to the world, but with a different perspective. You begin to perceive things differently. The body is no longer a machine, but a temple. Spaces are no longer stages, but energy fields. People are no longer obstacles, but mirrors. And life is no longer a struggle. It is a channel through which you move, guided by an intelligence that comes not from outside, but from within. And all of this begins in the navel. Yes, it sounds small, almost ridiculous. How can something so simple change so much? Because it's not the navel itself, but what it represents, what it activates. At this point, your 2 baselines intersect. The vertical, which connects you to earth and sky, and the horizontal, which connects you to the present. And when these 2 lines meet, the 0 point is created, the axis, the place where you can live your life without getting lost in it, the place from which you can observe without running away, act without forcing yourself, feel without sinking in. And of course, there will be days when you forget, days when everything throws you off track, when you react, fragments scatter, but now you know how to return. You are no longer at the mercy of chaos, because you have a center, and this center is physical, real, sacred. It doesn't matter if the world doesn't understand it. It doesn't matter if no one sees it. You feel it, and that's enough. Because to live from there, you don't need consent. You need presence, and it is this presence that changes everything. When you are connected to your inner antenna, you don't have to control life, you just have to listen and act from there. Not in haste, not out of fear, but purposefully, because you now know where you come from. And the most beautiful thing about it is that you feel it. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you were before the noise, before the forgetting, because that antenna was always yours. You just had to touch it, breathe with it, and listen to it. And what it says is simple. You are home, you can now live from within. I don't know if you've noticed, but something has changed. Not in the world, not outside, but within you. A different vibration, a denser silence, a more vibrant atmosphere. No one brought it there. The video didn't bring it forth, you awakened it. Because that's what happens when you return to a forgotten place. You don't arrive at a new place. You arrive at yourself. And although the outside world continues to spin with its noise, its demands, its screens, and its urgencies, you no longer spin along in the same way. You are at the center, and the center is not a physical place. It is a state, a bodily presence, a silent alignment between your breath, your body, your soul, and something else. The ancients never ceased to honor this something. The mystery, the channel, the antenna. On this journey, you discovered that this antenna wasn't a nice metaphor or an esoteric idea. It was real. It was located in your body, in your navel, in the place where there once was a cord and is now a memory. And now you know that the connection remains, even if the cord has been severed. It's not visible, but you feel it, and what you feel is the most real thing there is. Therefore, this closure isn't a farewell, but an anchor. A whisper reminding you that you don't have to look so far anymore. You don't have to chase every sign, every theory, every new practice, because there's a place within you that already knows, and that place is still simple but alive. And if you ever feel lost, disconnected, and torn again, remember this gesture. Bring your hand to your center and breathe. Listen, there is no clearer voice than this, for it comes not from fear, not from a sense of duty, but from your antenna, the same one that connected you to life before you could speak. And now you can use it to speak to life, not with words, but with intention, because the central point isn't just yours. It's the same in all beings. It's the place where we become equal, where there is no more separation, where the web begins that connects us without us even seeing it. And if they tried to make us forget that we were never truly separate, they only convinced us that we are alone. But that's not us, that's never who we were. The channel was simply asleep, and now you've awakened it. You don't have to tell anyone, you don't have to prove it, just live it. Because living from the center shows in your eyes, in your decisions, in the way you walk, play, and be. And if one day the world asks you what's changed, you won't have to explain. Just smile, touch your belly button, and remember, I have reconnected with you, with the point where it all began. And now, yes, you are home. I don't know if you've noticed, but something has changed. Not in the world, not outside, but within you. A different vibration, a denser silence, a more vibrant atmosphere. No one brought this about, the video didn't bring it about. You awakened it. Because that's exactly what happens when you return to a forgotten point. You don't arrive at a new place. You arrive at yourself. And even though the world outside continues to spin with its noise, its demands, its screens, and its urgencies, you're no longer spinning along in the same way. You're at the center, and the center isn't a physical place. It's a state, a bodily presence, a silent concordance between the breath, the body, the soul, and something else. The ancients never ceased to honor this something. The mystery, the channel, the antenna. On this journey, you discovered that this antenna wasn't a nice metaphor or an esoteric idea. It was real. It was located in your body, in your navel, in the place where there once was a cord and is now a memory. And now you know that the connection remains, even if the cord has been severed. It's not visible, but tangible. And what is tangible is the most real thing there is. That's why this closure isn't a goodbye. It's an anchor, a whisper reminding you that you don't have to search so far anymore. You don't have to chase every sign, every theory, every new practice, because there's a place within you that already knows. And that place is silent. It's simple, but it's alive. And if you ever feel lost, disconnected, and torn again, remember this gesture. Bring your hand to your center. Breathe. Listen. There is no clearer voice than this, for it comes not from fear, not from a sense of duty, but from your antenna, the same one that connected you to life before you could speak. And now you can use it to speak to life, not with words, but with intention, because the central point isn't just yours. It's the same in all beings. It's the place where we become equal, where there is no more separation, where the web begins that connects us without us even seeing it. And if they tried to make us forget that we were never truly separate, they only convinced us that we are alone. But that's not us, that's never who we were. The channel was simply asleep, and now you've awakened it. You don't have to tell anyone, you don't have to prove it, just live it. Because living from the center shows in your eyes, in your decisions, in the way you walk, play, and be. And if one day the world asks you what's changed, you won't have to explain. Just smile, touch your belly button, and remember, I've reconnected you from the beginning, from the point where it all began. And now you're home,